Well, this is actually take two. My first take, I spent the entire time yawning and trying to sniff stuff out of my nose. So we're going to try this again. Today is the 23rd of March. It is also our and my fifth week off of marijuana and off of video games. I've been feeling pretty good. Last night was the first night I slept pretty much the whole way through, didn't get up at all, and woke up this morning feeling excellent. So got up early, had breakfast, had a couple of Milos, finished the editing done on my book, and gave myself a plan of action for getting the book out to people that I want to look at it. I'd like to have it published. If it's at all possible, I'd like to have the book published. I think it's a subject that is relevant nowadays. How to quit marijuana is a subject that's relevant. And I believe that there are enough people out there who would like to know how to start, but also be able to give themselves a little bit less reading to do than some of the other self-help books would make them do. Like if you buy a Tony Robbins book, you're going to be reading it for a month or two. And for some people, that may end up being 2 or 3 months. I had a friend of mine who couldn't even listen to the whole Jordan Peterson 12 Rules for Life book on audio. So I've decided to make mine much shorter and more condensed, but with the same sort of advice in it, based on my experience and sort of how I've been able to be successful at constantly getting back on the horse and doing these things. So anyway, yeah, so I'd like to have it published, but if it doesn't get published or if it's unsuccessful, after sending it out for a year or two, then likely I'll just end up releasing it for free. I have no issues with that. I've enjoyed writing it and I think the information's good, so I'd be happy to put it out and have people just read it for free. Yesterday I talked about vulnerability. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that now, actually. I came off testosterone replacement therapy and have recently picked up on Clomid as part of a return to fertility program assigned through my urologist. My belief is that it's not meant to last for too long, but some of the side effects of Clomid are pretty shit. You get an increase in estrogen, so there's some side effects that are not overly useful for a man, like libido kind of not being there, not having an interest in physical intimacy, and even pornography. The 1 or 2 times in the last month that I've turned to pornography as an outlet, it seemed so like sterile and weird. And as soon as a penis shows up on the screen, I'm like, God, fuck, get that thing away. I don't want to see that. It looks like it's like a fly's proboscis going into a flower. It's very scientific and weird. And I don't know if I like it or not, to be honest. Part of me is kind of happy that it's that way, because it's like I never liked that I was into porn when I was into porn, and now that I'm not, I like that I don't have any interest in really looking at it. But the downside is that body parts have become a little bit asexual for me. So yeah, and that's given me some pretty heavy feelings of vulnerability, because for the last 6 or 7 years, I've been an animal. A big part of the changes that I've made in my life recently were due to me giving up chasing tail and running around looking for women to get inside. So yeah, it's weird to sort of say goodbye to that animal part, but still at the same time I'm like, well, I want to keep some of those things because I need some of those things in my marriage. But thank God that I have a wife who's patient and understanding about all this, and she knows that we're doing this or at least that I'm doing this for the fertility reasons. But when marijuana came up in my head yesterday, it came up in my head a few times during the day, to think about what different ways that I could use it to get some of that, that natural desire back. Because in the past, if I'd smoked up, I was always horny. And I think that becomes a problem when you're in a use pattern. So for me, losing that and feeling vulnerable about it, and the libido kind of going away and feeling vulnerable about it, made marijuana seem like a legitimate way to cover it up, and deal with it. When in fact, the more I really did think about it, the more I realized how much of a one-way street it would be, because it wouldn't really change things, and it would make me more paranoid and more vulnerable feeling ultimately. So um, I'm not really sure how that relates to video games. Yesterday I was bored. I didn't have as much to do for work, so I was sort of kind of bored in the afternoon, and I ended up watching a lot of Netflix, which I felt was a kind of a waste of time. I enjoyed what I watched, and I got something out of what I watched, but at the same time there was that sort of lingering feeling of guilt in the background about not getting as much done as I could have been getting done. And so I've resolved to take care of that and spend less time on the TV and more time doing the activities that are productive, and then leaving the television watching till later on in the day. Something that I want to talk about today, there was, or I guess yesterday, there was a shooting in Colorado in Boulder. Another mass shooting. Looks like maybe it was one or two or maybe three guys. The one guy that I saw who had the blood coming down his leg didn't exactly look like a winner. He looks like the kind of guy who's probably spent a lot of time inside, a lot of time on the internet, and a lot of time thinking too much. And it's weird because last night we actually watched a show called Tread on Netflix, which talks about a guy called shit, can't believe I've completely forgotten his name. A guy in a town called Ganby in Colorado also, who got so in his head and so self-deluded about the way that the townspeople were treating him that he actually armored up a big old bulldozer and then just went around and smashed a bunch of properties before he shot himself when the thing crapped out on him. And how he didn't kill anybody. He did a lot of damage. I think they estimated probably $10 to $15 million worth of damage to the town in general. But it was a determination of his, or it was a combination of his determination and his craziness that got him to that point. And the fact that he spent way too much time by himself and way too much time isolated from others. I'm willing to bet that underneath the usual bullshit political narratives that come spinning out of this, like white supremacy or the fact that they're probably going to be linked to being Nazis or some other bullshit, I'm willing to bet that underneath all of the political nonsense and the convenient lies that will be told by the mainstream media, I'm willing to bet that this is going to be another story of young men locked inside with no purpose, no higher purpose in life, nothing to motivate them, nothing to guide them. B, no mentors and no good friends around who could talk them out of the stupidity that they were getting themselves into. C, a lack of good parenting throughout the course of their life. I'm willing to bet that these were all soft human beings who grew up with little boundaries, who were either that or they were abused or given too many boundaries, and so as a result grew up somewhat stifled and weren't able to fully explore the things that might have made them less sick in the head. There'll be some mental illnesses for sure, and possibly there'll be drug use tied in. I'd be willing to bet that they're either dope smokers or they're on some kind of strong medication for mental illness that they might have stopped taking. And last but not least, there will be a tie-in to the effects of the lockdowns. I don't know exactly how well Colorado locked down, but I do know that when you dig underneath all of the political bullshit in the news right now, there is story after story after story after story of kids committing suicide or kids taking up long-term chronic drugs or alcohol abuse. There's an increase in domestic violence in the homes. There's an increase in all of these mental illnesses in society that come from when people don't have a purpose and when the government essentially suppresses what's going on. And I've been pretty vocal that I don't think we should have locked down as much as we did as a country. I think that there was definitely a reason to do it for certain populations and for certain areas that have a higher concentration for those populations, certainly. But when you see a statistic like 79% of people who came down with hospitalized COVID cases were all obese. I mean, personal wellness and well-being plays into that, and mental well-being plays into that as well. And so I guess the notes that I wrote down was for this particular shooting in Colorado that it was not surprising, as fucking tragic as it is, that all those people had to lose their lives and that these young men felt like this was the way out for them. And for some of them, I believe it's a ritual suicide. But for the one who survives, assuming that the narrative isn't spun in a way that makes it, white supremacy or some other fucking half-handed, hackneyed bullshit, I'm willing to bet that it's got to do with mental illness and the general malaise of young people nowadays when we don't have sort of this overpowering higher purpose for their age group as well as for their country. One of the saddest things for me is, having moved here, been a fan of the United States for so long, seeing the way that the culture of excellence and individuality and hard work and cooperation too, like not just individuality as in, oh, I'm going to be by myself, but individuality as in, I'm going to make decisions, hard decisions for myself and for my family, that might go against the grain of popular opinion, and have people who stand up for themselves. That's being torn down by this sort of weird groupthink idea where everyone's supposed to think and act the same, because then that way we can start to predict outcomes, and that's how we make outcomes all equal. And I think that's sickening. But anyway, like I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I get the feeling that the news is going to talk shit about it, and I want it to at least get my point of view out there before it starts getting spun like crazy. I know no one will probably see this or give a shit, but yeah, it's tragic. It really is tragic, and I'm not going to say thoughts and prayers because what the fuck is that going to do? It doesn't do anything. I'm saddened by it, and worse, I'm not surprised that it hasn't happened. Or rather, I'm not surprised that it happened, and I'm surprised more that we haven't seen more of this as a result of the lockdowns and the shutdowns of schools and the shutdown of society. People who need help, whether or not you have COVID going on or not. And our inability to deal with those people and to find and identify those people it's made even worse when you don't let them out into society. That's a heavy one anyway. That's it for me. Good luck with your endeavors, and God bless the country. And that includes everybody in it that I disagree with. Ka kite.